Hello there. Welcome back to my channel, Snips by Kelly. I'm Kelly, and tonight I'm excited to move on a little farther in the Memory Lane series. So if you followed me, you know that a couple weeks ago I broke open the Memory Lane product bundle to complete a couple layouts in my Everyday Moments series. And I'll link those videos up here in the description, but one process video focused on watercolor washing and other color techniques, creating all those little stamped houses and giving them a nice watercolor wash look, and then doing the same with the flowers, using some ink rubbing techniques, creating that journaling with some watercolor wash, and creating this great layout to document my son and daughter-in-law's first home, the closing of their first home. And that was one layout that I used the Memory Lane series for to add to the Everyday Moments layouts. I did an additional layout using the Memory Lane product bundle, and this was Waylon James, our youngest grandson, playing in a cardboard box, using some of those leftover houses that had the watercolor wash on it and a traditional grid design. And I had so much fun with that. I'm going to link that up in the description, but I promised my paper crafters that I would keep going in the Memory Lane series to complete at least 5 two-page layouts. So as part of the Everyday Moments series, I have 2 two-page layouts complete. So tonight, our process video is going to focus on a third. Now I pulled out some Cricut cuts and I cut some flowers in melon, light and dark melon. Also cut some flowers in the Ballerina, white daisy with Ballerina ink, some honey butter centers, did a little bit of rubbing with the blending brush on the edges of both of those flowers. Then I grabbed some simple little houses off of the Cricut and used several colors that were recommended with this series, including melon, Seabrook, glacier, honey butter, Ballerina, I think that's all. And then some sage and some Seabrook flourishes. And I actually added a little bit later some rosemary flourishes and leaves as well. And I just wanted to use some Cricut bits on this one. I'm going to do some stenciling and a little bit of stamping, but I wanted to be a little heavier on the Cricut cuts in this layout just to have a little bit of a variation from all of the watercolor washing that I did on the first 2. So I've actually created some strips here, and they are 3/4 of an inch strips, and I actually am going to tear the ends of those strips. But before I do, I am wanting to use these strips in a color coordinated fashion. I wanted to organize the strips according to color families. So often when we get new colors of cardstock, it seems like we feature layouts or cards that are cardstock only. And we oftentimes will do rainbow colors or colors in color families. So that gave me the idea to take all of the different patterns from the pattern paper and add a little bit of cardstock, do 3/4 of an inch by 12-inch strips and do some tearing on those, but organize those into color families. So the greens and the blues up at the top, the yellows then, and then the pinks. So I have the fronts and backs of the Seabrook and the sage green strips, as well as a Seabrook strip, light and dark, and then a glacier strip. And then I went into the yellow patterns and I did honey butter, light and dark strips. And then I went into the melons and the pinks. So you can see here how I'm arranging those. And I'm just going to kind of measure around that 10-inch mark. And I'm actually going to cut some or tear some of those strips at 10, some at 10 1/4, some at 10 1/2, some at 10 3/4, just a variety of strips. And we'll be toggling those strips back and forth. And I have a vision where it's going to be hodgepodgey. Some of the white will be showing through, some of it will be a little bit on a diagonal, some of them will be straight, some of them will be separate, Some of them will be overlapping. And I wanted to focus on this layout on how to make super, super simple backgrounds look stunning. There's always been something in me that loves showcasing all of the patterns in a pattern paper pack. And I love seeing all those patterns together. And one of the reasons that I love that is close to my heart is incredible by doing the heavy lifting for us. They do all of the coordinating. And I'm always shocked that when you apply the papers to patterns, you don't have to think about what's matchy-matchy. You don't have to think about what coordinates, because even if they're a variety of patterns, close to my heart has made sure that all of those will coordinate with each other. It seems like if you follow their cheat sheet in terms of A, the coordinating cardstock, B, the recommended pattern papers or recommended colors that they say go with the pack that are listed on every zip strip, and then you use the pattern paper with that, you can't go wrong. It will always coordinate. And it is one of the primary reasons that I got into Close to My Heart in the first place. So I was part of scrapbooking groups, and I scrapbooked for years. And we had a local scrapbooking store that I loved and cherished. And they had, this local scrapbooking store had retreats and little classes, and they actually purchased products from a huge variety of companies. And so we got all of our materials and supplies from there, and then they closed down. And I thought, what am I going to do? And a friend turned me on to Close to My Heart because I had spent days and hours and weeks in local scrapbooking stores or craft stores trying to coordinate, standing in the aisles, going to one aisle and grabbing stickers, going back to the other aisle and going to the pattern paper, going to another aisle and going to the cardstock, just trying to find things that would be matchy-matchy. But Close to My Heart was already matchy-matchy. They come in coordinated kits and sets, so you don't have to do the thinking. So my concept or my idea with this is to use very simple background strips, showcase the colors as well as color families, and then maybe do a little stenciling off to the side that matches with the series of colors. So maybe a little bit with the greens and the blues, and then a little bit with the yellows, and then a little bit with the pinks and the melons. And my idea was to use this really cute Spending Time with You sticker as the anchor on the bottom of the layout. Add some little flourishes and some flowers around it. I'm not exactly sure which ones or how or what or where, and I do end up adding some treatments onto those leaves. I've already treated the flowers with Ballerina ink around the edges using a blending brush. Maybe creating a little cluster in the upper left. I'm going to do a 2-page layout, so I have both of my Versamats out with two 12 by 12 white daisy bases. And then anchor the photo, a larger photo on the left and maybe about 4 photos on the right. I want to use this layout for Gracie May's senior pictures. Gracie May is our oldest granddaughter, and she's actually off at college now, but these were her senior pictures. And she is now already a freshman at the university and having a grand time. I can't believe how much time has flown by, and Gracie May was always my creative one. She is a paper crafter, she is a quilter, she can sew, she paints, she distresses, she repurposes. She's very logical, but she's very creative. She's one of those old souls that reminds me of a very old-fashioned, older person, but in a younger spirited body. With a younger spirit. And I think she has always been unique in that she has so many old-fashioned skills. She crochets, she makes jams and jellies, and she's just such an amazing person. And I know that as her grandmother, I'm supposed to brag about her, but I really, really mean it. She's incredible. She's so bright. She received so many scholarships and is studious, but yet has a wonderful sense of humor. And I wanted to create this layout for her in honor of her gorgeous senior pictures. So I'm just clustering a few things. I have no idea quite what I'm doing. I do want to incorporate the little houses, and I want to incorporate the flourishes, maybe some stenciling in the background. I am looking at her photos here. She had her photos taken in the Badlands, which is just a gorgeous natural phenomenon of rock formations and a little bit of forest and trees. And this is her boyfriend, Norman, who also graduated this year as well. And shortly after these photos and into their summer of their senior year, Norman was going to be going off to the Marines. And so he had a few snaps taken with Gracie when she did her senior pictures. And so she has a really light pink blouse on, and then the blue in the dress. And my idea was to maybe toggle these photos over on the right. Now, there's literally hundreds of photos of her that I could use. Some of her photos lent themselves more to fall, and she's wearing like fall sweaters. And then these ones still had a little bit more of a vibe that I felt like went with these more pastel-y summer colors. And so this is the base of my inspiration. So I'm playing around a little bit with the leaves. I do feel like I want to do some inking on some of those leaves maybe. And I also want to do a little bit of maybe inking and stenciling in the background. My original idea was to actually do a lot of stenciling and match the colors. So start with maybe the rainbow of colors and the greens up on top, lead into the blues, start with some lighter yellows, some darker yellows, and move into some pinks and some melons and peach. I actually decided to grab one of our brand new stencil packs. It's called Stencil Pack 2, and it's actually for slimline cards, but it had some great patterns in it. It had this floral and then these diamonds or grids. It had also some leaf grids, but I sort of was fixated on the diamonds as well as the florals. And I was thinking, instead of doing every single color along the side, what about using the Seabrook and the Ballerina and making some interesting patterns with the diamonds, with the Seabrook ink, and then maybe using a little bit of the pink with that floral background, maybe even doing a little ink splattering. So I've pulled in my all-purpose mat. I have it on the back side of my Versa mat because it's soft, and I'm keeping my little sort of master inspiration, even though nothing is put together and finalized, over on the left-hand side so I can see where my spaces are. I'm going to have some white space up at the upper left. And so I'd like to just maybe come in with a little bit of a Seabrook pattern in that upper left corner with these diamonds. I have it kind of sideways so that the diamonds are sort of the long way, and I'm just sort of stretching and rubbing softly here. Now, I didn't tape this down with washi tape. The next time I do this, I actually do tape it down. And now it's easy to line up if you are like me and you're a little bit lazy and you just kind of wanted to do a little bit in the upper corner. It's easy enough to hold down, but it would probably be a little bit easier with washi tape. If it gets off, you simply can reline it up. And I'm just being careful not to get the straight edge, and I'm really loving that look. Stencils are so big right now, and we have a huge array of stencils and close to my heart. We have some 12 by 12 stencils, we have card size stencils, and we have these slimline front stencils. And I don't mind whatever size they are. I can find a way to make them work either by piecing them together or cutting them apart. So now I'm going to take my Ballerina ink, and around the lower right edge, I'd like to make a floral pattern. Now, this stencil has some flower tops, it has some flourishes, it has some whole flowers. It's really beautiful. Again, that's Stencil Pack 2, but I'll put all of this in the description of the video. Now, I actually ran and grabbed some of my washi tape, and I am going to I'm going to washi tape this down this time and just make it easier on myself. Sometimes I think, oh, it's going to save steps if I just quickly do it, and then things move around, and I should have just been taken the path of least resistance and taped it down in the first place. So I'm just doing a variety here, a little bit on the edge, a little bit in the middle, and just making a wonderful, wonderful pattern. And it turns out so pretty. So that's with the Ballerina ink. I'm going to pull that off now. I'm super satisfied with that. I'm actually going to do a little bit of stenciling on the right page, on the right base as well. So I'm going to not really put my pieces in place, but I already know that my pieces are going to be very similar. I'm going to use strips on the right side as well. And so I think that maybe to make a cluster of 3, I'm going to have a visual triangle. I'm going to have some flowers in the upper left. I'm going to have something in the kind of lower or middle of the left page. So maybe over here in the center of the right page. And I was thinking about combining those two. So on the left page, I did the diamonds in the upper left, and I did the floral in the lower right. So now I thought I might do a little bit of both. So I'm going to create kind of a curved area here in the middle with the floral stencil with the Ballerina. And then I'm going to do a tiny bit on the top of that with the diamonds. I have no idea why, other than I want to. It's my page and I'll do it if I want to the tune of It's My Party and I'll cry if I want to. So just creating that visual interest over there, even though the page is going to be super colorful with all of the pattern paper strips, it is such a basic, simple background. We're literally going to lay the strips on the background without even measuring. We're just going to lay them on the background in a hodgepodgey way. And I love it when super simple equals stunning. I call that a score. Whenever you can get by with something super simple that ends up turning out stunning, it's wonderful. So I'm just doing that same thing here on the bottom and adding that little bit of element of interest, and I'm loving it. Then I want to pull those strips back in and just make sure that they are what I think they're going to be, and that the vision that I have in my brain that's rattling around up there is what I'm wanting. So you can go darker, you can go lighter, but now I've put those strips there, and the only thing different that I did on the left versus the right is I did the strips the opposite way. So on the left, I have started with my greens and my blues, and on the right I started the complete opposite way. So the yellows are still somewhat meeting in the middle, and I'm kind of fussing around here because in my head I love it when you just take a bundle of photos and throw them in a pile. And sometimes it comes out so cool, the little arrangement that is made by just plopping them in a pile. Now, if you're a straight person and you like straight edges, you can put those, like I was showing you, very straight, but I like the concept of them laying over these strips just almost by accident, the way that you threw them in the pile. Of course, we're doing it on purpose, but making it look like an accident. And I'm just kind of trying to arrange these in a hodgepodgey way. And I get a little long on this section, so you can fast forward a little bit, but I'm getting there. And I'm just kind of trying to work out the concept of what I want that to look like. I want all of that vibrant color to show all the way around the edges. I don't want to pull those photos out and have lots of space in between those, because I truly, truly want that vibrant color to show. Now I want to actually come in with a little Seabrook shimmer brush. Now, if you don't have the Seabrook shimmer brush, simply grab your watercolor brush, make a little puddle of water, add a little bit of Seabrook ink into it, and splatter with that. And we've done that many times on video before, but I happen to have the Seabrook shimmer brush, and I don't know why, I had some difficulty getting it out of there to begin with. And I'm just adding a little bit of that Seabrook over that stenciling that I did in the lower right, and I'm going to do the same thing over here on the upper left. And that's the only place that I really want that. I'm going to let that dry, and then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to do a little bit of that on the right page as well, and then do that over the top of the stenciling on that right page, kind of upper and lower, and I'm loving the look of that Seabrook. Now it looks a little tiny bit dark, but it dries light. It dries lighter, and it's just shimmery. I wish you could see that up close. Hopefully you can see that, but it's just shimmery over the top, and it's so, so pretty. So there is our super, super, super simple background, nothing to that, and we're going to make it stunning. We're going to do some embellishing, and we're going to make it stunning. And I actually have 1, 2, 3, let's see, 3, how did I do this? 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, is it 14 strips? Is that right? Let me double check that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 strips that are 3/4 of an inch. I started with 3/4 by 12 and did some tearing anywhere from 2 inches off to 1 3/4 to 1 1/2 to 1 inches off. And I didn't measure. I just left a little space at the top. I left a little more space at the bottom than the top because we're going to anchor that title on the lower left. And my vision right now, I'm not exactly sure at this point in the video, but my vision right now is to do journaling strips at the bottom and say something lovely about my Gracie me. So I don't have a ton to say other than my husband always says that scrapbooking is my love language, and that I really am, what do you want to say, a little more mushy in my scrapbooking journaling. I think my feelings come out in my journaling on my scrapbooks easier than they come out when I'm talking, or I also am able to write it. I've always been someone who can write my feelings better than I can say my feelings. Not that I think I'm open, and I always tell my kids I love them and I'm proud of them and I give them compliments, and that's not hard for me, especially when I'm genuine about that. I've been blessed and fortunate, and they're not perfect, don't get me wrong, but I've been really, really blessed with wonderful children and grandchildren. And so I do want to say how beautiful I think she is and how proud of her I am and how much I'm going to miss her. But of course, you want them to fly. You want them to fulfill your dreams, or you wouldn't be a loving grandmother if you didn't want them to go off. But I will miss our time together. I was really lucky. In my Close to My Heart business, Gracie May got to be my school to work worker for her senior year. So she got to come over about an hour and a half every day during school and work and help me with paper crafting. So she learned about making videos, and she learned about, packaging kits, and she learned about color, and she learned about creating, and she also brought a whole set of skills to me. She's amazing. She kept me organized, and I miss her. I need her. So I want to talk about how much I'm going to love and miss her. So now is the fun part. I have all my little bits here. I did say that I actually did add some rosemary. Now, rosemary isn't a suggested color in Memory Lane, but there was something about it where I just wanted a pop of something darker. And so I had the Seabrook leaves and the sage leaves, and I just really felt like I needed one more tone of green, a little bit more of a dark color to put in there. So I'm not putting anything down now because I do think that I do want to add just a titch, a tiny, tiny, tiny bit of inking on some of those leaves. It really is incredible when you do a little bit of either tone on tone or just a little bit of contrast inking on the edges. And I don't always ink. I don't ink all the edges of all my pieces. I'm not a fan of that, but I do inking when I think it's appropriate with things that would have shading, like a leaf or something like that. So I don't always with photo mats or the individual pieces that are on layouts. There are some people that absolutely do not feel that their layouts are finished without inking every single piece. And I'm not one of those people, but I am one of those people that loves to ink the edges of things that would have a natural contour or that would have a natural blending of multiple colors. So I like to give that shading where you go and you have a little bit of a darker edge and it moves into the center and it gets light, or the other way around. So I have this little house here, and it doesn't come with a back. None of the houses came with a back, but I kind of had the idea of backing that in white and maybe finding some kind of a stamp in there in the memory lane stamp set that's small enough to fit inside. And lo and behold, I find one that says "this moment." And I love that idea of just stamping inside that and using some extra bits. I do feel that adding some white background pieces to the backs of those houses will kind of help a little bit, because right now you're getting little bits and pieces of pattern paper that's sticking through, which is okay, but I do kind of feel like I want to have some white backs on that. So now I have those pieces kind of where I think I want them, but I do want to add that inking to those leaves like I talked about before. I anchored everything down, just the main pieces, but what I did, I only had 2 flowers on the left page. And so I actually cut 1/4 of a flower off of the top flower and tucked it down under the bottom. The second flower on the bottom I cut in half and put in 2 different places. I added the white to the back of those houses. I'm not exactly sure which house is going to go where. I didn't put the white on the Ballerina house yet because I want to do some stamping on that. So because I'm not doing very much stamping, I'm just going to grab the foam that comes right in our stamp set. And I wanted to show you on our acrylic stamps how you could either do masking and you could mask off part of the stamp, because the way the stamp is horizontally like this, it won't all fit inside the little heart. But if I stamp them on top of each other, cut that stamp in half and put those on top of each other, they're going to fit inside the heart. And I love that idea. Now you might be worried about what about when you want to put the stamp back together? It completely meshes right back together. That acrylic is bendable and pliable, and you can just push those stamps right back together and it won't hurt them a bit. Now you have to look at the individual stamps. This had a little tiny space in between and it worked out great for me to cut it. So I'm actually going to stamp this in intense black on an angle, and I like it how it's going to kind of come on an angle with the shorter word on the top part of the heart and the longer part of the word on the bottom, and I'm loving that. I do want to sponge a little bit of Ballerina ink in the background. Should have put my hair in a ponytail, so sorry. Forget to do that sometimes on these videos. I always say if there's a hair in any of my pages, that is compliments of grandma. Oh gosh. Okay, so now I'm just taking my mini ink blending tool with a dauber on the tip. And we do have a little Velcro on the ends of those. And so I'm actually just sponging these. They're pretty delicate leaves. So what I end up doing is I end up doing a couple by hand like this. And then I decide to lay them down and actually just do a little bit of pouncing on those and just tap, tap, tap on those. And then I end up being able to get the edges, whoops, blinding you there. I end up being able to add the tone onto the edges. Now, I'm only using Seabrook ink on all of them. Even though I'm doing Seabrook on Seabrook, Seabrook on Sage, and Seabrook on Rosemary, I love it. I love the contrast. I feel like it makes 3 different colors, even though the Seabrook, because the Seabrook is going on 3 different colors, I feel like it makes literally like 6 different colors. It looks so beautiful on the edges, and it just gives that nice little tone. So I'm going to do most of those off camera, but I did want to show the pouncing. So I did come back in with a couple of them and show how I'm just pressing down over and over to get that color on the edges. And then if it's a delicate piece, it doesn't bother it a single bit. It just works great. I'm loving how everything is transforming into stunning. So it starts as super simple and it just transforms into stunning. I'm not spending hours upon hours just on the background. I'm actually already onto the bits and getting really, really close to being able to just work on the bits, which everyone knows is my favorite part. I did speed it up a little bit, but it did get a little bit long, but it's my favorite part. And I do add chapters to my videos. So if you want to fast forward through the chapters for the highlights, you can skip some of it, but I love it. I do want to show you that that foam is 100% wipeable. You can literally just wipe that foam off after you did your inking and it will come right off. So now the fun begins. I'm going to play with the leaves and just kind of figure out where I want to put the leaves and flourishes. So I do want to continue on with the Memory Lane series. So oftentimes with my Snips by Kelly paper crafters, they want me to do specials. And I think I've mentioned in a couple of the previous videos how backlogged I am. I do have a full-time career. We have a working ranch and farm. I have 8 grandchildren. And then my close to my heart business over the years has just transformed into its very own full-time job. It started out 100% as a hobby. I got into Close to My Heart as a hobbyist in 2015 just for the discount. And for the reasons that I stated before, my local scrapbooking store closed and I wanted to be able to continue my scrapbooking. I had been scrapbooking for years and I wanted to continue my scrapbooking. And so from 2015 to almost 18, I just made my own workshops, and our workshop kits I loved. And that is how I learned by doing, they were called workshops on the go back then. Now they're called scrapbooking workshop kits, and they typically create 6 pages. The instructions are included in them, and they're the best way to start, in my opinion. I started by doing every workshop kit and being part of a Kit of the Month club. And the person who was my upline invited me to her Kit of the Month club. And every month we would put together one kit exactly how the company designed it. And I learned so much. My scrapbooking was really transformed. And so I did that for almost 3 years doing those kits. But what happened is I ended up with lots of leftovers. And it bothered me to have all these bags of leftovers after creating those 6 pages. So I began designing pages for myself to use up the scraps, and it became an obsessed mission. And I began creating as many layouts until there was no stickers left, till there was no paper left, or whatever was left was so small that I could throw it away. And that after I did a Kit of the Month club and I did the 6 pages that came with the company's workshop kit and made my extra pages, I typically would have 10 to 12 pages and nothing left. And I would just add cardstock. I wouldn't add much else. If there was technique that was included in the kit, then I would add that to the other pages as well and carry that through. And other paper crafters at my crops would say, well, I have the same leftovers because I did the same workshop you did and I have the same leftover pieces. So they started writing down measurements on napkins, taking pictures of my layouts. I actually started sending my master layouts through all over the state because one person would use them to make theirs and then they'd send them to the next person, and then I'd get like my masters back like a year later and I would have forgotten I even made them. So I finally started jotting it down on paper. And then that turned into creating actual workshop guides. I was like, I'm doing all the work because other makers wanted to do the same thing. So I began a couple years, maybe 2018 to maybe 2020, actually just creating guides for myself, for my customers, and for other makers, using up leftovers and creating full 12-page workshops. And that has just transpired and continued today, and it has just grown and grown and grown. And so anyway, that is why I'm really behind, because I have all these other things in my life. So I told my paper crafters I can't do any specials for a while because I'm trying to keep up with my Simply Scrappin' workshops for the regular line and my Sparkle and Shine workshops for the regular lines. And I promised them I would go ahead with Memory Lane and I would create 10 to 12 pages and do process videos on those layouts. And I tried this earlier this month with Gnomes for Autumn. And it has been a huge success. I did a little cheat sheet option and a Cricut cut option with my Gnomes for Autumn, or I gave people the option to just follow my videos. And I tried to be really careful giving measurements and showing exactly what I was doing so that if my paper crafters got the workshop bundle, they would still be able to create a full workshop. I just wasn't doing a full, extended, super detailed workshop guide. I was just giving them measurements and showing them what I did, and then making sure that I used the product in the product bundle with added cardstock, and not going over the product in the product bundle in terms of pattern paper and those types of things, so that they knew if they got the product bundle and they created my 10 or 12 pages, they would be a-okay. They would be golden. And so that's what I'm doing with Memory Lane as well. I created the first 2 layouts as part of a different series. Here is the third 2-page layout, and I have a minimum of 2 more 2-page layouts to come. So if you want to backtrack and look at the first 2 layouts, I did link those early on in the description. They're part of the Everyday Moments series, but they're using this collection. And so I purchased the product bundle because the product bundle, when I never know what direction I'm going to take, I always get the product bundle because it has everything in it. And we get the biggest discount on the product bundle. And then I know that I have the stamp, I have the pattern paper, I have the coordinating cardstock. I have all the things that I'm going to need in the product bundle to create whatever I want to create. And I don't have to go back and add pieces to that. So now, as you can see, I'm working on my clusters, just working on those clusters, moving things back and forth. I ended up loving, I didn't know if I wanted the ballerina house over on the side that was heavy on the pinks. And so I was struggling going back and forth, but I did end up loving that over there. And I ended up loving adding those clusters. So I did the same thing over on the right in clustering those leaves, tore apart a few of those leaves, cut off not even a fourth of that flower, and moved it over to the left-hand side by Gracie and Norman's photo just to add a little pop of color over on the greens and the blues. It was a lot of greens and blues with the sage house over there, and I do have a lot of space on the bottom. But I do want to add my journaling. So I love using our journal strips. We have white sticker journal strips that we have available. I love to write out longhand in my handwriting all of my journal writing, because if I mess up on a journal strip, I can just cut off that journal strip and I haven't ruined my page. I do have just a few little bits left, not much. And I have the little heart from our stamp set that I use used for bling in the first two-page layouts, so I thought I would use that as embellishments for this layout as well. I'm a little bothered by the transition between these two houses and the anchor sticker. So I thought I could use the heart that came out of the Cricut house over on the right, add a little bit more flourish there, and sort of cover up that transition, and then maybe use some of those extra bits. I have them, why not? I didn't want to go too crazy and have it be overboard, but I think Gracie is worth it. I think Gracie's senior photos are a pretty big deal, senior pictures, and so I have that extra flower, so I thought maybe something super simple, like one leaf and one flower to sort of anchor the middle down there and add my journaling to the bottom. And again, I was saying I love our journal strips, sticker strips, because you can stick them wherever, you can cut them apart, and I'm going to show you here in a minute how I actually lay them out with the story in paragraph form, and then I snip them. And I snip it as I know where I want to put it so it's the perfect size. So I want to create a little transition with that flower. So I'm literally just snipping the words, moving the words over, and snipping them back into place. And then I can actually just pull those off the sticker sheet and add those in order. And if I needed to stop and start. So if you have an irregular area that you want to add your journaling to, it's perfect because you could go back and forth with your strips and snip them exactly where you need to snip them. Instead of writing on your page and then going, oh, I ran out of space, or oh, I made an error and now I have to have a scribble on my base, or now I have to redo my whole base. I use other things. I use regular cardstock strips. I journal right on top of pages. I journal on clear Avery labels by typing. I journal on regular paper by typing. I journal on cardstock by running cardstock through my printer. I do a lot of different journaling, but these strips are really a go-to for me because I really love having my own handwriting in it. I think that's going to mean a lot to my children and my grandchildren to have it be in my own handwriting. I'm not a super fan of my own handwriting. I've broken both of my little fingers several times and my handwriting is really wobbly and messy. And so sometimes I'll put like a ledger underneath to write, but it's what my children and grandchildren are used to seeing. I love that now. So now we're really getting down to the nitty gritty. We're really getting close. I thought maybe a few word stickers, like adding a word sticker to that upper cluster on the upper left, adding a word sticker to this flower cluster. So I thought I would dovetail the end and just actually use one of those words. I think it says life adventures. So I'm just going to use adventures. Even though I like life, I just needed it to be a little shorter. So I'm going to add that underneath the flower here as like a little banner coming through, and I am loving it. I hope you're seeing how simple transforms to stunning. I hope you see that, how spending the time on the clustering and the layering and the part that I love the best, instead of spending the time on the background, makes for super fun. I love also how your eye visually goes down the color combinations. You probably don't even realize it when you're looking down that the colors are in series and color families, and it just meshes all the way down and it has a real easy flow. And then having that visual triangle with the cluster on the upper left of the left page, and then we have actually kind of two sets of visual triangles because we have the house cluster on the left and then the floral cluster on the center right, and then over on the right page we have a cluster of three as well. I didn't necessarily mean to do that on purpose. I was trying to make a visual triangle with just a triangle of three, two on the left and one on the right, and I ended up just, I think instinctively, if you're used to doing that, you end up doing it without knowing that you're doing it. So I have the visual triangle on the left page as well with the house on the left, and then the flowers on the bottom, and the flower cluster and the houses on the right. I thought I would add a couple little rounded circles there. for some added interest. And then the last step is coming in with the heart and doing a little stamping and embellishing with the heart. I'm getting happy. That's what I always say at the end. I'm starting to feel happy. And if Kelly is starting to feel happy, that means we're close, because I will work at something. I am a little bit obsessed, and I will just finagle things around, probably to an annoying degree. I'll just fidget and fuss and play, and it's absolutely fun. I hope you have fun with clusters. I hope you've learned a little bit here, or that you found something in here, some little tidbit useful. I hope you've been entertained, and I hope you'll give it a try. Most of all, I hope you'll also look out for the last 2 videos in the series, at least 2 videos, maybe there'll be 3. I was just looking at my little pile here of what's left, but we have that stamp set, so we have lots of possibilities left, and I have a few ideas up my sleeve of some unique and fun and interesting things to finish out the Memory Lane series. I hope you'll take a moment to hit subscribe, like, follow, and I love your comments. I hope you'll give me a comment and let me know if you followed along, and let me know if you've loved the layout, if you've loved the process, and if you love taking simple backgrounds and making them stunning. Thank you so much for hanging with me. It's my favorite thing to do, hanging with the people that are my people that love paper crafting and scrapbooking and memory keeping just as much as I do. Happy scrapping, and here's to you, my Gracie May. I miss you so much as you're off conquering the world at the university. Happy scrapping, everyone. Bye-bye. See you next time. So I do want to continue on with the Memory Lane series. So oftentimes with my Snips by Kelly paper crafters, they want me to do specials. And I think I've mentioned in a couple of the previous videos how backlogged I am. I do have a full-time career. We have a working ranch and farm. I have 8 grandchildren. And then my close to my heart business over the years has just transformed into its very own